All right. Okay. Cloning has always fascinated me. Growing up, I was a huge fan of Star Wars, and one of my favorite video games of all time was Star Wars Republic Commando, which follows the storyline of a very gritty leader of the Delta Squad who sends out his commands to his different clones in the clone army. That they all were cloned after this guy named Jango Fett, who supplied the DNA they needed, and how they made this big clone army, and how you get to send commands out, you get to show your squad where to go, where to hide, where to take a sniper position and take out the bad guys. And I really liked that. I liked the concept of making clones and having them do my bidding, clean the house, do my chores, go to social events I don't really want to go to. That was the dream, and cloning was what was going to make that possible. And although genetically identical, those soldiers had very different personalities, which I thought was really interesting. They weren't exact copies, they were different people. Um, but logistically speaking, how complicated is it to make a clone? To answer this, you got to go back to when we first cloned a mammal, and her name was Dolly. I have a picture of her right here. I don't know if you guys can see that. Dolly was the first mammal that made it to adulthood that was cloned from a cell from a different animal. And to get you guys in the right mood, I want you guys to all think about where you were in 1996. Now, I know I'm the baby of the group here, but uh, on July 5th in 1996, two men, Bill Ritchie and Ian Wilmot, were busy working as a team with their own different divisions, trying for the last several years to make a successful clone of a mammal. Bill Ritchie had successfully taken a single mammary cell from a female ewe and fused that cell with an egg of a different sheep, and then planted that inside a surrogate mama sheep. So the nuts and bolts of cloning is very simple. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, put it inside a surrogate mother, boom, you get a clone. But executing it and understanding every little tiny detail that goes along with that process, this is not something that you just do in your basement on a Saturday for fun. We are not perfect at this, but we're trying very hard to make sure that that happened and to get it correct. And there was a lot of failures leading up to Dolly, but she was the success story. She came out bleeding and asking for milk from her mother, and she was a healthy little baby sheep. Um, and they jokingly called her Dolly after Dolly Parton because it was a mammary cell that they used to clone to make Dolly. In February 23rd, 1997, uh, they were trying to keep this down. They were trying to not let it out to the public that Dolly was a cloned sheep. They wanted to make sure that this was going to get published in scientific journals. And when you want to get something published in a scientific journal, you are not supposed to be in the tabloids before that. Um, but on February 23rd, 1997, a leak got out, even though they were keeping things very hush hush. And Dolly's face was published in the Sunday paper. And the Monday afterwards, the news exploded across the world. You can probably think of where you were when you heard that cloning was a possibility. The world went nuts and they got super jumpy about it. Now, years prior to this, a frog had been cloned just fine, but cloning a actual mammal was just out of this world. It mean that we were one step closer to actually cloning humans, and everybody got really nervous about that, especially the religious extremists who started protesting that using the reject eggs donated by women to different donation spots, that was sacred, and holy and part of, the great, world God had made for us. And we were trying to play God, and that was not allowed. And they protested harshly against it. Everybody jumped to those clone armies that I was talking about in Star Wars, and they were envisioning the worst of our enemies, trying to clone more and more clones who they don't care about. They'll just send wave after wave at us, and nightmarish, kind of visions of the future. So much that the president of the United States, said no more funding from the government on cloning for a while, until 2009, when President Obama lifted that ban on stem cell research and funding, which was great, and we were able to get back on the track of being able to understand our bodies better and being able to replicate those important stem cells and other, life-saving things to help us further our research and help prolong life, help defeat cancer. These things could have been in our reach, but because of that fear mongering, because of religious extremists as well, because of fear of the future, we don't really get to know where we would have been today if we had just embraced this new technology and tried to learn a little bit more about it instead of automatically fear it. And instead of fearing, the future, let's strive to move forward with a brighter hope for tomorrow. And who knows what we'll be able to discover.